Nice to be with you. I'm Beverly O'Connor. A little later, a state election win gives Malaysia's Prime Minister a political boost against pressure from the opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim. First, though, tonight, Armenian forces and troops from Azerbaijan are continuing to exchange fire in a breakaway region tonight, with both sides accusing each other of sparking a full-scale military attack. These are the latest pictures of the fighting in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, where at least 23 people are reported to have been killed. The two former Soviet states have also mobilised their reserve forces and declared martial law in some areas. The disputed region, while internationally recognised as part of Azerbaijan, is under the control of ethnic Armenians. And there is concern over stability in the South Caucasus region, a corridor for pipelines carrying oil and gas to world markets. Russia and China are calling on both sides to show restraint and to use diplomatic channels to resolve the decades-long conflict. Let's get more on the story with Alessia Vartanian, a South Caucasus analyst with the International Crisis Group. Good to talk to you. What has provoked this renewed fighting?
You know, tensions have been on the rise for weeks. In midsummer, Armenia and Azerbaijan, they engaged in clashes. And there was no diplomatic follow-up to that. We haven't seen any kind of shuttle diplomacy taking place between the capitals, calls to the leaders, while more incidents were taking place along the front lines. This was probably one of the main reasons, the lack of the very proactive international diplomatic intervention, a timely one that could prevent this current escalation in the conflict zone.
Well, the Azerbaijan president says he's confident of regaining control. Which side do you believe has the upper hand at the moment?
It's very difficult to say because the military developments are still are taking place. What I can tell you for sure is that both sides have been using more heavy weaponry. More soldiers are engaged in this. We see artillery being used. And unfortunately, some of the strikes, they reach the civilian populated areas.
Iran has offered to broker a deal. When you talk of international intervention, who's the best place to do that?
Russia has been the main mediator between Armenia and Azerbaijan for many years. In the past, when there were clashes or escalation in this conflict zone, it was Moscow that helped the sides to break a ceasefire. Now everyone is watching to see what Moscow has to say.
Could we see other countries, say like Turkey, intervening?
Turkey has been supporting one of the sides, and with Azerbaijan, for many years. But more obvious and in a clear way, it started taking place. I mean, the support has been taking place after the midsummer clashes at the border. Recently, the Turkish president said that he would be ready to support Azerbaijan by all possible means. We still have to see to watch and see what it means, because if there is a foreign military intervention in this region, it will change so much in this whole region, not just between Armenia and Azerbaijan, in the South Caucasus and in a broader area. Too much is at risk to make such steps.
And let's talk about what's at risk, because of course we know this is a critical area for the supply of oil to go through the Caucasus region. What else could, what more broadly could be impacted?
First of all, with this definitely the story about civilians. Both Armenian and Azerbaijani side, they declared their readiness to protect civilians. There are hundreds of thousands of people living close to the front lines. If we see mass casualties, first of all, there will be all the mediators, they will have very difficult time to contain the fighting and to break the ceasefire. But second, the more civilian casualties we see, the more potential is there for the international military intervention.
Alessia, good to talk. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Donald Trump reportedly paid just over $1,000 income tax the year he won the US presidency. The New York Times says it's obtained tax return data that shows Mr. Trump paid that same amount during his first year in office. It's also reporting the president paid no federal income taxes during 10 of the past 15 years.
We're under audit, but the story is a total fake. And all of this, or is this one, you know, we had the same exact questions, usually asked by the same people, and that took place 4 years ago. You remember, this was so well litigated.
The newspaper claims the president mostly avoided paying tax by reporting heavy losses across his business empire. Donald Trump is the only president in modern times not to have made his tax filings public. And Trump's tax returns may not cause any major movement in the polls, but his Democratic challenger Joe Biden does hold a consistent and large lead over President Trump in the national polls. 4 years ago, of course, Hillary Clinton was also ahead. So just how sceptical should we be? Here's Casey Briggs.
And here we go.
The unexpected outcome
Donald Trump is the President of the United States.
that shook Americans' faith in the polls.
A complete earthquake.
4 years later, what's the chance we end up seeing a repeat?
On the average of September's polls, Joe Biden is ahead in enough states to claim more than the 270 Electoral College votes needed to win the White House. But polling is just an estimate. If Joe Biden consistently overperformed his polling by 2%, it would be a complete blowout. If Donald Trump's vote is being underestimated by 2 points, well then it becomes a much more competitive race.
There's still enough volatility in very close states where it could swing in the opposite direction by the time we get to Election Day. And that's one of the things that we saw in 2016 is that there was a late swing towards Donald Trump.
Overall, the polls weren't out by any more than 2012. But in 2016, errors in key states were the difference between victory and defeat, like Michigan, which Trump took by just 0.3%.
And it was just enough that changed the outcome by 10,000 votes, 30,000 votes, 40,000 votes in each of these states.
In 2016, 13% of Americans didn't decide who to vote for until the final week of the election campaign, but in the end sided decisively with Donald Trump. This time around, the number of undecided voters is already smaller, more than 5 weeks from Election Day, which means fewer swinging voters left to win.
People are voting right now because they know the very soul of this country is at stake.
Pollsters did miss one thing, the growing importance of education level in who you vote for. There was big support for Donald Trump from voters without a college degree that was missed. That's now been corrected for.
Bottom line, we're doing very well. We have the biggest crowds.
There's still plenty of opportunity for voters to change their minds. On Wednesday, the candidates debate face-to-face for the first time. Casey Briggs, ABC News.
And on Wednesday, we're going to bring you an election special looking at the impact of US foreign policy on the shape of the Asia-Pacific. Well, coronavirus infections continues to surge in India while the numbers in East Asia appear to have stabilised. India's COVID case tally has topped 6 million after it reported more than 82,000 new infections in the past 24 hours. It's behind only the United States, where the number of cases is now sitting at 7.1 million. There have been more than 30,000 new cases daily for nearly 3 weeks now. South Korea today reported 50 new cases, the lowest since new outbreaks emerged last month. And China expects a significant rebound in domestic travel over the upcoming Golden Week holiday. Since March, the daily cases have mostly been in the single or double digits. Meanwhile, India's Prime Minister has made no mention of the state of the pandemic in his country at the UN General Assembly. Instead, Narendra Modi has used his speech to criticise the United Nations, saying the global body has not done enough to combat the virus.
The whole world has been fighting the global pandemic of coronavirus for the last 8 to 9 months. Where is the United Nations in this joint fight against the pandemic? Where is its effective response? Your Excellency, reform in the responses, in the processes, in the character of the United Nations is the need of this hour.
And the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, says talks are underway to resume travel with Australia. She says a so-called travel bubble between New Zealand and some Australian states could be possible before the end of the year. Such plans were disrupted after a resurgence of COVID-19 in Melbourne, followed by a second wave of infections in Auckland. Ms Ardern has told TVNZ Australia had changed its plan from a countrywide approach to a state-based strategy.
Previously, they wanted a whole of Australia approach, and we always said that they would slow things down. You know, we did suggest it would be up to them, but if they move state by state, that might free things up a little sooner. And so they've moved on that. They're now moving to a hotspot regime where certain parts won't be able to be part of free movement between Australia and across the Tasman. So we're just working through the differences that would make for New Zealand and the arrangements we would need, of course, to make sure that even if you're opening up to one state, that border is contained to ensure that it's safe.
And a coronavirus cluster in WA's north has grown again, with 8 more crew members from the Patricia Oldendorff cargo ship testing positive. It means that 17 out of 21 crew members have tested positive, but authorities maintain there is no risk to the wider community.
As crew members evacuated from the stricken vessel adjusted to life in hotel quarantine, the COVID cluster they're at the centre of grew even more serious.
We have now confirmed another 8 COVID positive cases within the crew.
Remarkably, it means WA had more confirmed cases of the virus than Victoria in the past 24 hours. The first time any state has recorded that unwanted milestone in nearly 4 months. But officials had been bracing for infection numbers to grow and insist there's no cause for panic.
It is not unexpected. It is within the realms of our expectations. And therefore all the measures that have been already put in place are entirely satisfactory.
Of the 12 Patricia Oldendorff crew members in hotel quarantine, 10 have now tested positive for the virus, while 7 of the 9 Filipino nationals still on the ship, 15 kilometres off the Port Hedland coast, are also infected. What will happen to those still at sea remains unclear.
Everything that is humanly possible to keep them safe, to keep them healthy, and to keep that vessel secure are already in place.
It is disturbing that there are COVID positive people still as part of the essential crew on the ship. And I guess we have to ask the question, what happens if one of them gets really sick?
For the dozen crew members isolating at the Hedland Hotel, locals have been pitching in to help.
They were very reserved when they came off the ship. We just tried to welcome them and make sure that they were okay. We've then also been able to supply them with SIM cards.
The situation has made some residents in the Pilbara town nervous.
Concerned, worried and anxious to see what is going to be the ultimate comment of this. And let's hope they don't have a repetition of what happened in Melbourne.
And in a bid to make sure that doesn't happen, Defence Force help is on the way to Port Hedland. Up to 10 personnel are expected to arrive from Thursday, with more than 120 already assisting quarantine operations in Perth. Jacob Kagi, ABC News.
Well, more than 4 million Australians just got a pay cut that will show up in their bank accounts within a fortnight. The JobKeeper wage subsidy has been slashed from today by $300 for most workers and more than $700 for many others. Here's National Affairs correspondent Greg Jennett.
These are some beautiful cinnamon scrolls.
For a business that's had its payroll covered by the government for 6 months, One Pot Catering's not at all put off by cuts to the scheme.
The inquiries are starting to ramp up. So for me, it's working out well because, you know, the past couple of weeks I've managed to top my staff's wages up.
JobKeeper kept Wayne Farmer and 3 staff ticking over when functions were frozen and 95% of orders dropped off. But he sniffs a recovery this spring.
They enjoy the fresh salad.
And is backing the phase-out of JobKeeper payments.
Everyone wants to have free money, essentially, but I prefer a business that wasn't relying on it.
Because chefs who are on it elsewhere have been reluctant to take jobs he's offered.
They go, I'm on this wage at the moment from the government and I need to be earning double a week for it to be even worth my time.
For anyone not getting their government wage subsidy topped up by the boss, the next 3 months into the new year get tougher. The number of workers on JobKeeper falls from 4 million to just over 2. And from now on, their total fortnightly pay drops from $1,500 to $1,200.